let's stay in the American though. Let's talk about FAU then. Okay, let's move on. FAU hires Zach Kittley. All right. If you're a big college football fan, I think a lot of people will know who this is. If you don't know who that is, right? He's an offensive guy. Okay, he was at Western Kentucky, right, with Bailey Zappi, and when they went absolutely crazy with him. Then he went to Texas Tech to be the offensive coordinator for the last 3 seasons. Before that, he was at Houston Baptist, also with Bailey Zappi there. He's a Texas Tech alum. He's young, guys. He's 33 years old. Okay, Brian White, the AD at FAU, I think, and he's been there. He hired both Willie Taggart and Tom Herman. Okay, both coaches did not work out. Okay, and he's like, man, what did I miss? What did I get wrong? Okay, what I think he saw was like, okay, when we had Lane Kiffin, right, we had the most success that our program has ever had in its program history was with Lane Kiffin, and that was an innovative offense, okay, and a head coach with very high energy. Okay, I think that's exactly what you're going to get with Zach Kittley. Uh, you're going to go in there, and he's going to absolutely innovate this offense. And guess what? He can do a lot of different things. Okay, he can either throw for the FBS record and for passing touchdowns and passing yardage in a single season, or he can turn that around and run 300 times with Taj Brooks. At Texas Tech, like he can do everything. Like he's not limited in his offense, and the resources that you've put together, on his staff, it's an interesting staff for sure. But I think this is one of the single best hires and underrated hires of this entire coaching cycle. This is going to be one of my highest grades that I give out for this entire coaching carousel series in 2025. I think this is a phenomenal hire for FAU, who, by the way, the brand of FAU athletically has never been as high as it has been, right? Zach Kittley has a lot at his disposal, more than any other coach in FAU history has ever had.
Just music to the ears of our Boca Raton friends, right? I'm with you here. I think the structure and the formula of which you went at this coaching hire was fantastic. You talked about what worked, what didn't work. Let's do what worked, right? That's pretty simple. It's made a lot of people a lot of money. It's what most successful businesses do, right? Like obviously figuring out what you do well, what works at your program, and also like the state of Florida has a ton of talent, right? Boca Raton is in a very successful area in spots where you can drive 3-4 hours, no more than that, and find a ton of really good talent. Problem is, everyone else knows that. So you're going to have a lot of guys, do that. Being able to create an exciting brand of football and having quarterbacks and offensive linemen and wide receivers and offensive guys on the football team, want to play for you and be able to get yourself in living rooms of people that you normally would not be able to, that you'll only be able to do that with Lane Kiffin, right, is awesome. Now, obviously, will it work? Who knows? You're hiring a 33-year-old to run your program. And I say that not as a bad thing. I think that's super, super impressive. This is not a guy that, played college football and was able to just like be a star in the NFL and go back and, just get a job because that's his name. Like he is a guy that worked his way up and has impressed every single person that has been around him and led him to all this kind of stuff at a super, super young age. You talk about meteoric rise. I mean, 33 years old. It seems old. I guess if you're not old, it seems like, okay, he's not like super young. He's not like a baby, but that's still so, so young. You only have, 10 years really coaching football to be able to help yourself FBS leader of a program, especially in a spot where right now, more than ever, like, being 33 to have the energy, the stamina, relatability to these players, like that is so, so important, right? Especially if you're taking over at FAU. I love it. I think it's awesome. So a little bit about Kittley, right? So he attended Abilene Christian, right, for a year or so to play basketball for them. He's a tall dude. You could see him. He's a tall dude, which is awesome. His dad coached at Abilene Christian, not at the same time, but previously. He was track and field coach there. And then he transferred back to Texas Tech to complete his bachelor's degree. And that's when he started working for Cliff Kingsbury, right? And he started earns his master's degree. So he obviously had that crossover with Mahomes that everyone loves to talk about. But he was a guy that Cliff Kingsbury, he attached himself to Cliff Kingsbury, and Cliff Kingsbury really attached himself to him as well. Was able to learn from him. He goes on to after a couple years being a GA at Texas Tech, gets hired as an offensive coordinator at FCS Houston Baptist, which with zero position coach play, zero position coach, right? Like experience, zero coordinating experience at all, not even, doing any of the play calling, gets a
No
job at a
collegiate
D1.
football experience playing either.
No. So it's just, let's just do it at age like 25, right? Whatever it was. I mean, just crazy young, and goes on
Scotty
and
Walden vibes.
yeah, which we'll talk about Walden. He's in here actually later on, which is awesome. Um, he lights it up at Houston Baptist, right? No surprise because he's Zach Kittley, right? He obviously, Bailey Zappi, what he did with him, bringing him over to Western Kentucky, was there for Western Kentucky all but a year, putting up ungodly numbers, right? After going, 5-7, averaging 19 points per game. They almost, like doubled their offense, right? Averaging over 30 points per game. I mean, it was crazy. The instant change. And obviously it helps having a legit NFL quarterback on your team playing in the CUSA, obviously. But so you FAU fans, you remember that. You were in the CUSA back then with Willie Taggart. Then he goes to his alma mater at Texas Tech, right? Gets the OC job there, gets the quarterback coaching job there, working with Joey McGuire, working with Baron Morton, with Tyler Shuck, who was hurt, working with Will Hammond, right? Well, developing Will Hammond, recruiting Will Hammond, right?
None
And
of whom have disappointed, by the way.
no,
If you ask me,
not at all. And he dealt with injuries at the wide receiver position, at the running back, at the running back position a little bit, but also at the quarterback position. And he kind of was able to, instead of right, like throwing the ball all over, let's just freaking run the ball a ton. And he ran the ball a ton his first year, with over 1,500 yards. Taj Brooks, having a young Morton in there, who's also banged up. And then Morton comes in and develops him over the offseason. He was top 10 nationally in yards per game, touchdowns, all that stuff. And Brooks also had 1,500 yards. So it was a ton of success, right? A ton of success. Everything he has touched offensively. He's been around a lot of good players, a lot of good coaches as well, but has also had a ton of success. So like I said, like I say that, he's 33, but he earned that. He earned every single thing he has, had these opportunities to have. And he's obviously exceeded all of his expectations. And we think he'll do that again here as well.
yeah, I. What else can we say about him? I mean, he just like continues to impress and overperform at such a young age, right? I mean, the concern is like we talk about stepping stone jobs, like with certain coaches at his age. It's like maybe this is a spot like where if he does really well in a couple of years, he goes and moves on somewhere else. But that's the thing about being in G5 though. Like you have to stack good hires, right? And it starts with a good hire like Zach Kittley, or at least what we believe is a good hire. We could be eating our words, right? And I trust Brian White. I mean, we talk about like one of like the better ads like in college athletics right now, probably to date. I'm shocked that he wasn't in more conversations when the Ohio State AD job came up, when the A&M AD position came up. He's been part of other conversations in other spots, like when AD jobs have opened up. I'm just shocked that this guy hasn't gone somewhere else. But Brian White continues to impress. I think that he's got another good hire. Now, by saying another, I mean another good hire in a different sport. He hasn't had success with football in the past, but I think he's learned from those hires. And I gotta believe that Zach Kittley's going to do some good things here, man. I gotta believe it. And in this new American Conference, where you have a chance to compete at the upper echelon of this conference, like you have a chance to compete for American titles. Okay, you do. You don't have as many resources as Memphis. I'm not saying every single year you're going to be neck and neck with the Tigers, or Tulane, or like whoever it is, like. But there may be some years that Zach Kittley generates you an explosive offense. You get a beneficial schedule, and then when you're talking about American championships, that's when you're talking about college football playoffs as well. Like some of those Lane Kiffin teams that he had would have been in the conversations, right? They weren't fantastic on the defensive side of the football. That's going to be the challenge for Zach Kittley. Can he hire defensive staff? That's good. I don't know if he's done that, right? It's probably the only reason that I didn't give him an even higher grade, than I did give, which is already basically not to spoil this, but if people have watched our Bronco Mendenhall video, I have Bronco Mendenhall and Zach Kittley like way up there at the top in terms of the coaches that we've already covered. So I'm a big fan of this. I guess I'll let you talk about the staff.
Well, real quick, let's get into his contract. So it's a 5-year
Good point.
deal. He's gonna be making 1 million and then an extra 100,000 every year after that. So 1.1, 1.2, et cetera, et cetera. So the total salary with all the bonuses and everything else is gonna be about 6 million over the 5 years, which sounds like a ton of money, and it is. To be 33 and to be a millionaire, goddamn, that's amazing. Good for him and his family. And you also get to live in Boca Raton, right? Football in paradise, as they call it. But he was making $850,000 at Texas Tech, right? Texas Tech is not broke at all athletically, and they could have matched that or come damn near very close to it if they wanted to. That 1 million, that 7-figure mark for Kittley. He wanted to come to Florida Atlantic. He wanted this opportunity. Like you said, yes, it might be a stepping stone job. And again, that's just the reality of it. But would you trade those Lane Kiffin years? Like everyone, Lane Kiffin, yeah, he was looking on that first ticket out of there, and he went to Ole Miss and is having crazy success. But that's like you said, you stack coaches. You get a Lane Kiffin, and then you hire some other good coach, and you missed on Taggart, you missed on Herman, you hit on Kittley here. The goal is we think you will, and then you got to hit another coach, right? So it's unfortunately this vicious cycle you're in. But we talked about it with Charlotte and the opportunity Tim Albin has to leave the place in a better spot than he found it, right? Kittley, I think, will absolutely do that thing, right? Leave your mark on that program, elevate it, bring a brand of football to Florida Atlantic that is fun, exciting, able to raise money, generate support, and obviously field wins and talent in your conference and in bowl games. And you mentioned, yeah, like the college football playoff for these G5 schools, it's not ridiculous at all. The way it's set up right now, and in the American too, you get a good schedule. Like you said, you hit on quarterback, which Kittley seems to always do. Yeah, it's fantastic. And then lastly here, just want to mention a couple notable names that he mentioned, right, in his opening press conference that he's worked with, guys that have influenced him, right? Cliff Kingsbury, right? Tyson Helton, Ben Arbuckle, Joey
Yep.
McGuire, Sonny Cumbie, like
Yep.
a lot of names that you want to be surrounded on, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So I think it's fantastic. And the way I think he was able to learn from Joey McGuire how to build a program too, and Tyson Allen how to build a program, how to treat people, all that kind of stuff, things that go into being a successful football head coach, makes me really, really excited. Speaking of coaches, though, so let's get into this coaching staff here. So there's no OC, the offensive coordinator. I think it will be, or Kittley will be calling plays, which is what you want, right? And also, too, we talked about it. I believe, is it Central Michigan? Question mark. I got it in my notes right here. Sorry, Ball State. It'll be Ball State. So if you have a head coach that's also your offense coordinator, like that saves you money, right? And it also gives you opportunity to invest those funds in elsewhere in other position coaches and other things, recruiting budgets, all that kind of stuff. Plus, too, like you don't coaches get plucked a lot. Like one thing I've learned from doing these, not to go on too big of a tangent, one thing I've learned from doing these coaching in depths and finding all these, notes in these paths of these coaches and the assistant coaches, especially, they're changing jobs every year, every other year, right? So it's so hard to find continuity in your staff. If you have a guy that's like the offensive guy and that's just like his system he runs, right? That's such an advantage, especially if you are, facing that turnover. I think it
G5,
helps
I
with
think
consistency.
it's more effective, I think, in G5 levels, right? Would you say that?
And that's when it's more prevalent too when you have all this
Yeah.
turnover because like
And you don't have the budget, right?
yeah, exactly, and it helps you. So the assistant head quarterback coach with Trent Vassy, he was with Kittley at Texas Tech the past couple seasons. He also has connections with Lance Leipold at Kansas,
Money.
who we love on this show, and that's not a hot take at all. He's an awesome head coach. The running back coach is Chris Perkins. He is a stayover. He's been with FAU for a long time, since 2017. Been coaching the running back since 2019. You brought up that FAU has done a good job of recruiting and developing running backs the past couple of years. Credit to Chris Perkins for that. Excited to see what they can do in a
Yeah.
Zach Kittley offense.
Devin Singletary. Uh, White, who's the guy? White, drafted by the Bears.
Yeah. Yeah. Shit. I totally forget. But yeah,
Kareth White.
yep. That's a good pull there. The wide receiver coach is going to be DJ McCarthy. This is his third stint at FAU now. He has coached just about everywhere in the state of Florida. He's been at Bethune-Cookman, FIU, FAMU, UCF, a ton of ties to the state of Florida, right? So he's also coached at UCLA and LSU and has experience in the NFL with the Raiders and the Bucks. The tight end coach, this is where Scotty Walden comes in. Jajuan Delaney is going to be our guy. So Scotty Walden is a guy that really loves him, right? And, was very complimentary of Walden. He was with him at Austin, PA, brought him over to UTEP. So now Kittley steals him over to FAU. He also coached at Texas Tech. This is Delaney. Coached at Texas Tech in 2018, but there was no direct crossover with Kittley, but obviously the connections are there. And he has background in coaching tight ends and the offensive line. The O-line coach, is going to be the same guy that was with him at Texas Tech for 2 seasons. He was also his O-line coach at Western Kentucky. He was also with him back when Kittley was an assistant, a GA back in 2013, 2014, 2015, all that kind of stuff. He spent at Texas Tech with him there. So it's crazy that he has so young, but he also has like a good network of coaches he has been with or connected to, or guys that are willing to follow him. And like, yeah, this guy's a great coach. I'm going to attach my hip to him because the only place we're going is up. So for the offensive side of the ball, which I didn't think we were going to be curious about at all or worried about, he has a great coaching staff on paper right now that he's put together. And that obviously includes him as the offensive play caller.
Absolutely. I mean, the keystone with this, it's like that takes this, staff from good to great is the defensive side of the ball, right? Zach Kittley, not necessarily a defensive coach, right? By any stretch of the imagination. It's important. And did he get it right? We don't know. I'll let you talk about him, but if there was anything that scares me about this hire, it would be probably the defensive staff that he's put together.
Because he has to nail it. Because you expect him to at least get one side of the ball right with his offense.
Now, offense in the American Conference, and I hope that people would agree with me in the comments, offense is a lot more important than defense. You can get away with not having a great defense in the American. All right, we have seen that happen several times. I know Army had an exceptional defense this year. Tulane normally does, but Memphis, right? I guess SMU had some good defenses thrown in there, right, when they were playing pretty well in this conference. Cincinnati had some really good defenses, but I think in recent years you can get away with it, right? Not that you might not win a conference championship, but you can get away with it.
Without a doubt. So the defense side of the ball, the defense coordinator is going to be Brett Dewhurst. So he was at Coastal Carolina as an analyst most recently. Before that, he was at Mississippi State under Zach Arnett, right? So say what you want about Zach Arnett as a head coach. We believe on this show he's a damn good defensive coach, right? And what he was able to do. I know I listened to Kittley talk about Arnett and talk about Dewhurst and how excited he was to get him on staff, even though he has not called defensive plays. This is very similar to, the same thing going back to Houston Christian, where the Kittley was taking a chance on a younger coach, right, who doesn't have a ton of play calling experience. Love to see that come full circle there. Dewhurst was at Texas Tech. This was not when Kittley was there. This was back in 2018 as a safeties coach. That is more familiar with him at Texas State, who was a DB coach there. He talked about the defense. If you're wondering, you're going to be a very multiple defense. So it's depending on the personnel, depending on the situation, down and distance. Also, who you have on your roster, like what your roster calls for too. You're going to have even odd fronts, 3-4, 4-3, all that kind of stuff, 4-2-5, which I think is great. And especially in year one, when you don't know what kind of, it's one thing if you have, okay, yeah, we're going to be a 3-down line, 3-down front. The problem is you don't have a good nose tackle. Like, you can't run that successfully. So sometimes you have to build a scheme around the players, which is something that Kittley's done, right? When his quarterback goes down, he rushes for 150 yards a game, right, with his running back, or defense side of the ball. He sees that in Brett Dewhurst, which is awesome. The defensive tackles coach is going to be Devin Santana. He was at Miami as an assistant D-line coach, so he's familiar with the state of Florida, although that group, I know they were hurt, but they underperformed right? That defensive line underperformed, I thought, for Miami. We'll see how it works here at Florida Atlantic. He's been at UT Martin before, Auburn, Appalachian State, Wake Forest, Alabama State after he played there. He also coached, at IMG, so he's familiar with the high school circuit in the state of Florida, which is awesome. And he also spent a year at Florida Atlantic playing, right? So he's also from the state of Florida, a Tampa resident. So that's exciting there, right? Obviously having those ties in the state because Kittley's not really a big Florida guy. The inside linebackers coach, who's also going to be coaching the edge group, is Aaron Schwanz. He was the linebacker coach at Georgia Southern. He's also coached at Washington, LSU, Wisconsin, a couple Power 4 spots who are historically good at developing linebackers. Special teams coordinator is Tyler Shinoviak. He's a guy that comes to FAU with Kittley. He was at Texas Tech the past 3 seasons, who worked his way up, an analyst, a special teams coordinator, all that kind of good stuff. He was also with him at Houston Baptist, right? So all the way back, he was a special teams coordinator and running backs coach. So he worked pretty closely with Kittley back at Houston Baptist. So that's pretty good. That's the staff I got. Those are the only coaches they've really announced so far. Florida Atlantic has officially, like I said, the question mark is defense. Like you said, the question mark is defense. So we'll see how it gets done. Obviously, this is on paper, but these are some good names to know. I love the continuity in certain spots. I also love the fact that you've got guys that are willing to follow Kittley, right? Not only once, but twice, sometimes 3 times. We talked about that in the transfer portal too, where you have a coach that recruits a guy out of high school and he takes him once, and then he has an opportunity to work with him, meet with him, see how he's developing, and then that kid jumps in the portal and you get to recruit him again. You recruit a guy a second, third time. To me, that speaks wonders, and that gives me such confidence in how these people feel about Kittley. Obviously, it doesn't mean it's going to work, right? Not a guarantee at all, like we say in all these videos, but to me, that's exciting to be so young and to not only have the respect and the opportunity to coach at a head coaching level, but your peers, your subordinates, I guess, are like really excited for you and taking this opportunity with you, and because they believe in you, right? That to me is it's pretty impressive and amazing for Kittley and his family.
A lot of young guys on there, though.
Yeah. Yep.
A lot of young guys. So, and that can be a good thing. It can be a bad thing. We don't know. I like talking about coaching staffs because it's hard to see like how they're going to gel, in the future. But we can usually identify like a good coaching staff. I'm not sure if I'm ready to say that this is a good coaching staff that I'm surrounded with, but I trust him on the offensive side of the football, like you said, to get things right. I do have concerns about that defense, right?
Dewhurst is a risk for sure at
it
DC.
Is.
Now
but we'll see.
Yeah. They joked. You talked about how young the staff is. They joked about it because right, this is a whirlwind happens with the way the college football schedule is. Like you hire Zach Kittley, right? And then you got to put together a staff, and you're having these guys move down to Boca Raton. But the problem is like they're getting set up in like these hotels or these spots. So, and they're waiting for their families to move too. It's not just like an instant, oh, we're just going to pick up and leave and whatever. Like this stuff, the reality, life sets in. Like stuff takes time to happen. So they were joking about living in a frat house together, basically, where it's a big Airbnb and they got all these young coaches that are hanging out. Yeah. And they talked about, so they talked about like, that can be an opportunity where you grow together. And obviously, building that culture, building that continuity and connection and all that stuff. I think it's fantastic. And just a little fun anecdote.
I agree. So given the grade, all right, I talked about this being one of the highest grades I'm ready to give out so far, and the coaches that we talked about, I'm giving it an A. I'm giving it a flat out A, right? An A is he's exceeding expectations. A B is he's meeting expectations. A C is he's not meeting expectations. What are the expectations for FAU, right? Like, you haven't made a lot of bowl games recently, right? Is that the expectation? I think the expectation of the program and the trajectory, it's like, okay, we can build up to being able to compete every single year, right? Maybe that's the long-term expectation of fans. But I think like a bowl game, every other year, every 3 years, I think like that's meeting expectations. And he could get fired for doing that, which I think would be ridiculous. But because of the way that boosters work, they need to see more and more and more and more to donate more money. So sometimes you have to move off a guy, even if he's meeting expectations. But I think he exceeds expectations, and I think he gets hired away in a couple of years here to somewhere a little bit bigger. And he's a stud. I'm giving this an A. My tied for the highest grade that I've given any coach so far.
Yeah, to me, this is the most exciting. And by the way, that's crazy. Like, we don't give out A's here. Like Bronco Mendenhall,
No.
I know. Like if you haven't watched college football recently, you're like, who's Bronco Mendenhall? And like, no, that's a fucking amazing hire. Right? That
And we
is,
said it last year. We gave last year an A, and he gets hired away the next year to a bigger program. The
yeah.
next year.
You talk about like, and it's all also not only expectations of like if you're going to meet your school, but you also have to realize like they can't go out and get Kirby Smart. They're not going to bring back Nick Saban from retirement. Like, so it's not like you just have your pick of the litter of every coach you want. Like Kittley, to me, is a guy that like probably one of the goddamn best hires you can have, and I think it's fantastic. I'm at a B plus, and the only reason I have reservations about the defense side of the ball. Now, what gives me confidence is that I believe they're going to score a bunch, and like you said, you can score a lot and give up a lot and still win in the American Conference. Now we'll see what happens when you've got a couple new coaches, now a couple new faces coming into the American. But by the way, like you're bringing these coaches at Rice, right? You're bringing these coaches at Temple and Charlotte and FAU, and you get a lot of offensive coaches there, right? So it'll be fun. I don't think that theme is not going anywhere. But yeah, I'll be at B plus just a little bit. I don't think it's the slam dunk that Bronco Mendenhall is. I don't think, Tim Albin at Charlotte I gave it A minus because of like what that program was and what Tim Albin just did as a head coach, right? The last 3 years, winning 10 plus. Like to me, that's a really freaking good hire, right? And this is an amazing hire. This is more exciting than Tim Albin or even the Bronco Men. Like to me, this is the most exciting one because the upside is so tremendous, and what he's done everywhere, it gets you excited. And sometimes that's all it takes too, is a little bit of excitement in your program to get the donors. They talked about the alignment right there, right now, and how you talked about too the athletic program is doing a great job. The athletic brand is doing a great job,
Ticket
right?
sales are up. Donations are up. The brand, like I said, is the highest and most valued the FAU athletic brand has ever been. Zach Kittley, and part of this too, you mentioned it. You don't just leave your alma mater as a offensive coordinator spot at a Power Five school that could potentially compete for a Big 12 championship next year for a little bit of a pay raise all the way across the country in Florida. You don't just do that if you don't think you can win. I love this hire.
He also talked about raising his little kids in Boca Raton and listen, peace and love, and I love West Texas, love Lubbock, everything about there in that college town, but I like Boca Raton's a great place to raise a family. A great place to raise a family. So maybe you do have him for more than you think too, because you don't like who knows, right? And he's obviously a family man, just a very stand up dude, and we wish him all the best. He's going to be someone. Florida Atlantic will be a team that I'm absolutely tuned into, and the reality is like that might be just good enough as it is. If you're Zach, if you're the right, if you're Brian White, the AD, like, and you're just bringing eyeballs to your brand, you're bringing money into your program. This is a business. This is an entertainment business. Make no mistake about it. As much as we love college football, like that's the reality of it. And yeah, slam dunk. Love this hire and what they did with it. Obviously, I'm not convinced it's going to be an absolute home run, but I think in terms of like the process of how it went down, everything we talked about, it's something that's super, super exciting if you're a Florida Atlantic fan.